Section 1. Hey guys, tonight we're traveling thousands of years back into the warm, flower-dusted streets of ancient Thebes just before dawn, where ovens glow like little suns and everyone smells faintly of honey and sweat. You're not a noble or a scribe or a priest. Nope, you're a baker. And your shift starts before the ibis birds wake up. The stars are still blinking as you shuffle down the alley in linen that's already crumpled from yesterday's heat. Your feet slap the packed earth rhythmically, the air dry and oddly floral, though that might be the perfumed cone melting on your head. Don't touch it. It's goat fat infused with myrrh, and yes, it's supposed to be doing that. Just go with it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from anywhere interesting, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pass a man muttering to his donkey. Someone's already lit a brazier under a barley kettle, and the faint clunk of wooden paddles stirs something instinctive in you. Time to work. The bakery is tucked behind a quiet courtyard, shaded by mud brick walls that still hold the night's cool. The big clay oven's already breathing steam like a gentle dragon. It smells faintly of yesterday's carob crusts. You take it all in. The familiar hiss of the fire hole, the squeak of a pulley lift for water jars, the flapping curtain that doesn't really keep flies out. You nod to Renef, the master baker, who's counting sacks of emmer flour. His eyebrows look grumpier than usual, probably because the high priest of Ammonius just tripled his order. You're late, he grunts without looking up. You're not. But this is how mornings always begin here. Part ritual, part insult, part quiet joy. You step into the bakery's inner sanctum. Floors already dusty with flour. Someone's left a paddle propped against the date press. You feel your heart slow, like it always does here. This is your temple. You and the others knee by feel, not measure. You mix flour and water into a gritty slurry, folding with your hips more than your hands. There's a rhythm to it, a sway that matches the hum of the oven's belly. Your fingers remember what your brain doesn't need to. You pinch the dough to see if it sings. It does. Sort of. That means it's ready for a touch of sour leavening, a tangy, fermented dollop passed down from yesterday's mix. The cone on your head has started to melt more earnestly. You feel a trickle of scented oil slide down your temple. It's part perfume, part air freshener. Supposedly it keeps you cool and spiritually balanced. Realistically, it makes your eyebrows slick. A soft thud. One of the apprentices has dropped a tray of half-formed loaves. Renef grunts. You resist smiling. You remember when that was you. One of the loaves is shaped like a fish, another like a goddess's eye. Symbolic shapes make the temple priests very happy, and your fingers are quite good at shaping them. You've even carved an ibex into a barley biscuit once. The priest thought it was a goat. You nodded solemnly. Back then, you had no idea this job would become your whole world. You started as a water runner, then graduated to fire feeder, then paddle turner. Now you're trusted to handle the high-stakes stuff, festival cakes. Those ones with carob, honey, and black sesame. For funerals, they ask for date loaves, extra dense, to last the journey to the afterlife. This morning, you're shaping plain barley rolls. Humble, chewy, and a bit sour. You like them. A boy arrives breathlessly with a scroll. Renef unrolls it with dusty fingers. You can't read, but you know the look and order. Big one. For the Temple of Hathor. A feast. A funeral. Maybe both. It'll be a long day. You stretch, the scent of hot dough wrapping around you like a blanket. A pigeon coos from the rafters. Someone somewhere is laughing faintly. The day begins. And it's a good one, because you're here, wearing your melting hat, your arms dusted in flour, and your soul oddly content. Section 2. You don't remember the first time someone placed a cone on your head. Probably because it wasn't a dramatic moment, it just happened. Someone older handed you a palm-wrapped bundle and told you, "This goes on before sunrise." You obeyed, because that's what you did when you were new. The cones, called perfumed unguent cones by the fancy folk, are part scent, part ceremony. They look like little inverted teacups, made of waxy fat and crushed flowers. The elite wore them at banquets. You wear yours to sweat into dough. It seems unfair, but then again, even Pharaoh has to deal with sand in his shoes. The mystery of these cones, why they were worn, how they were made, what they actually did, still lingers. Historians argue whether they were used every day or just painted that way for special occasions. You, however, are living proof that at least someone found it practical to start the morning with one slowly oozing down their scalp. By mid-morning, the cone has softened into a sort of oily glaze. Your hair, what little of it is left after years of close shaves and heat, now smells vaguely like gardenia and goat. You've never seen a flower in person, just pressings and murals, but you like the smell. The logic, you're told, is threefold. The cone keeps your head cool, pleases the gods, and masks the smell of sweat. 2 out of 3's not bad. Today's batch is especially large, and the air inside the bakery has gone from toasty to something more like a sauna filled with porridge. Renef mutters as he carves tally marks into a wooden ledger. A scribe will come later to copy them onto papyrus, but for now, charcoal on cedar will do. You're shaping triangular loaves, simple, utilitarian, the kind that stack neatly in baskets. The oven, built like a sideways beehive, crackles steadily. A boy named Meanies, barely 12 and already boasting 3 scars from pedal burns, feeds firewood into its belly. He glances at your melting cone and asks, "Do they itch?" You shrug. "Only if you think about it." He does. 5 minutes later, he's fidgeting like a flea-bitten jackal. One of the older women in the corner, Temu, grins. First cone's always the worst. It's a quiet kind of initiation. You remember Temu's own first cone. She wore it backward, so the wax dribbled straight into her ear. She didn't hear right for a week. The bakery has its own legends. One is about the cone of the moon, a special batch made with crushed blue lotus and cooled under moonlight. It was reserved for high priestesses. Supposedly, if you wore it, you could speak with spirits while dreaming. You've never seen one, but sometimes when you close your eyes too long in the heat, you wonder. By midday, the order has doubled. A funeral procession has been announced for a mid-tier priestess of Hathor, and apparently she loved honey cakes. Renef curses softly. "We'll need extra flour. Temu, send someone." Meanies bolts before she can volunteer him. You keep shaping. Flour clings to the inside of your elbows. The cone is nearly gone now, just a sweet-smelling puddle behind your ear. The sun is directly overhead. Shadows are gone. Everything smells like bread, body, and beeswax. In the corner sits a carved clay tablet. It depicts a banquet, guests in pleated linen, women with cones like yours balanced daintily on wigs. They're laughing, holding goblets. Somewhere in the painting, you imagine yourself, cone melted, flowery hands just out of frame. Not noble, not even named, but essential. Without you, there is no feast. Demo whistles. Time for shaping the honey cakes. These are special, filled with crushed dates and rolled in sesame. You handle them with reverence, like little edible offerings. The trays are stacked high, each more fragrant than the last. You feel a pang of pride. You didn't build a pyramid, but you built this. And that's enough. Section 3. You wipe your forearm across your brow, which is a mistake. Now there's flour in your eyelashes and cone residue, sliding dangerously close to your left nostril. It's only 3rd hour, and already your linen tunic clings in places it was never meant to cling. You lean into the motion of kneading, hips swaying, arms rhythmically pushing and folding the dough against the stone slab. The emmer flour is coarse, nothing like the smooth wheat the palace kitchens get, but it's your everyday canvas. As you fold, your body starts to hum, matching the bakery's tempo. Slap, squish, stretch, sigh. The sound of labor, constant and oddly soothing. Someone sneezes. Someone else laughs. The oven wheezes like a tired god, its heat blooming into the room like a lion stretching in slow motion. The floor is streaked with old flour, ash, and someone's footprint preserved mid-slip. Meanies is back, red-faced and triumphant, with 2 fresh sacks of flour balanced across his shoulders. You don't ask how he got them so fast. You suspect minor bribery and a goat. Temu hums an old harvest song, something about wheat spirits and overly forward frogs. You start humming too, not because you remember the words, but because it passes the time, and time passes strangely here. The scent inside the bakery has grown layered. Beneath the dominant notes of heat and dough, there's something almost citrusy, Your cone, now entirely melted, has saturated the top of your tunic. Renef passes you and sniffs the air like a priest checking for incense. You smell like a garden that got mugged. You offer your best flowery shrug. The loaves are beginning to rise now, their cracked tops puffing slightly in the sunlit proofing baskets. You press one lightly with a knuckle and feel it spring back, proud and puffy. This is the part you like best, the stillness before the bake. The loaves lined in rows like soldiers or statues, waiting for their turn in the fire. You sit for a moment and listen. Someone outside is hawking onions. A donkey brays. The flap of a pigeon's wing. This is your kingdom, and you rule it with flour-dusted fingers. The bread, once shaped, is loaded onto a wooden paddle as long as your leg. Meanies balances it like a champion juggler, sliding it into the belly of the oven with practiced drama. The interior flares with light, then settles. The loaves begin their transformation. Heat in the bakery rises by degrees. You feel it radiating from walls, floor, even the inside of your own ribs. Your back is damp. Your hands have turned pale from flour. The sweat running down your spine feels like a cold trickle, but it's not cold. And yet, you're not miserable. Not really. This heat is your old friend, your rude cousin, your forever companion. You work best like this, slightly dehydrated, half-melted, utterly in rhythm. There's a low whistle from Temu. First one's done. Renef peers into the oven with the solemnity of a priest inspecting omens. He pulls out the test loaf, taps its bottom. A dry, satisfying thud. Good bake. You exhale. That thud means the inside is set, the crust solid, the bread worthy of a funeral offering. You want to frame that thud and hang it on your wall. The rest of the loaves follow in waves, some darker than others, a few slightly cracked, one a little too pale. Temu sets that one aside. It'll go to the workers at the granary. They're not picky. By now, the air smells intoxicating, baked date, roasted barley, and a hint of honey that sticks in your throat like memory. You bite into a misshapen roll, steaming and imperfect, and nearly sigh. It tastes like home. Section 4. You are elbow-deep in dough when the courier from the temple of Ammonius arrives. He's wearing more jewelry than fabric, and his eyeliner hasn't even smudged in the heat. Clearly, he hasn't touched a paddle in his life. Special order, he announces, unfurling a scroll with a little too much flair. For the high table, sweet rolls infused with pomegranate and blue lotus. 12 dozen. By sunset, a silence falls over the bakery. Even the oven seems to pause its breath. Renef narrows his eyes. 12 dozen. The courier sniffs. The pharaoh may attend. Ah, that explains the floral ingredients and the urgency. Pharaoh's visits are rare, chaotic, and fragrant. And they mean trouble. Everyone nods, silently calculating ingredients, oven space, and whether anyone has a stash of pomegranate syrup. Temu vanishes before anyone can ask. You glance toward the pantry. There's just enough blue lotus left for the scent, but not the full effect. See, blue lotus has interesting properties. If prepared a certain way, it doesn't just perfume your rolls, it relaxes the diner. Deeply. Some say it opens the gates to dreams. Others say it makes you forget you just ate barley for the 12th day straight. Don't overdo it, Renef warns. You nod. The last time someone got too generous with the lotus, a junior scribe ended up reciting grain taxes in song form for 3 hours. The prep begins immediately. You and Meanie start mixing honey into a slurry, folding in crushed lotus petals and the pomegranate pulp. The color is deep, almost regal. The scent, otherworldly. Even the flies pause at the edge of the table, unsure whether to swoon or flee. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the polished copper lid of a storage jar, smeared with flour, streaked with sweat, and your head shining faintly with cone oil. Glorious. The kitchen is humming now. The air is sticky with sugar and tension. Renef starts molding rolls into shapes associated with Ma'at, the goddess of truth, little feathered spirals that are fiendishly difficult to get symmetrical. You try one, fumble it, and squash it into a dignified oval instead. Good enough. There's a rhythm again. Not the morning's slow sway, but a sharper cadence. Mix, roll, press, layer. You reach for the carob syrup, drizzle a swirl, then move on. The oven glows hotter than ever. Sweat pools under your collarbone. Someone fans the proofing table with a reed mat. You remember the last pharaoh's banquet order. 50 fig-stuffed rolls, each shaped like the eye of Ra. The detail work alone took 2 days. Renef cursed like a sailor the whole time, then cried when the scribe declared them adequate. "Bring the clay stamp," Temu says. "Ah yes. For special orders, the loaves are marked with a symbol, a seal that says, 'These are sacred,' or 'expensive,' or both." Menes hands it to you reverently, a carved disc with the temple's mark, the sun rising over the Nile. You press it gently into each roll, leaving behind a delicate indentation. The dough seems to sigh beneath your fingers. The rolls go in. You hold your breath. Time stretches. The scent becomes divine, sharp lotus, tart pomegranate, and the unmistakable note of toasted barley. The first batch emerges golden and glistening. Renef lifts one, sniffs, breaks it open. Steam pours out. He tastes, chews, nods. Everyone exhales. By late afternoon, the bakery is a haze of heat and perfume. The last dozen are cooling, and your legs ache from standing. You reach for a cone. Yes, another one. Melted through the first already. This one smells of cedar and sandalwood. Fancy. Probably meant for the festival tomorrow. You figure no one will miss it. You sit on an overturned basket, watching the sun dip lower through the cracks in the bakery wall. The light slants golden across trays of cooling lotus rolls. The scent fills your head like incense. For a moment, you close your eyes and imagine the pharaoh himself tasting one of your rolls. And smiling. Unlikely. Sure, but not impossible. Section 5. The next morning, your hips still ache from the rhythmic kneading, but your hands move automatically, your joints now attuned to the daily rituals. Emmer flour in, water added slowly, mixed until shaggy. Then the dance begins. You twist, fold, press. Twist again. It's less baking, more body language. Like a secret choreography passed through generations of sweaty bakers with bad knees. Temu, still sore from yesterday's marathon of royal baking, is muttering into a mixing bowl. "My arms feel like I fought a hippo," she grumbles. You offer her a tired smile. Did the hippo win? Barely. Renef, surprisingly chipper, announces that today's orders are modest. Only basic loaves for market vendors and one small tray for a mid-level priest's birthday. Relief ripples through the room like steam escaping a pot. You relax into the comfort of routine. Barley rolls, date-stuffed lumps, triangle loaves stamped with razai. These are your bread and butter, literally. They feed the city, not the palace. And there's no pressure to make them pretty. Just edible, slightly crusty, and alive with the tang of yesterday's leaven. You shift to a new station, the grinding slab. Today, you're responsible for turning grain into flour. This means cradling a heavy stone roller and sliding it back and forth across a slab, slowly crushing roasted emmer into gritty dust. It's a brutal task, one that will leave your shoulders humming and your palms raw. But it's meditative too. As you grind, your mind wanders. You think about last week's honey thief, the temple cat who leapt onto a cooling tray and got its whisker stuck in syrup. Menes swears the cat is cursed now. You're not so sure. It still struts around like royalty. Temu pauses her kneading and says, "Did I tell you about the woman who kneaded dough with her feet?" You glance up. That's a punishment in some kitchens. Not hers. Claimed it made the bread taste like dreams. Sounds sweaty. Exactly. You both laugh. The story is nonsense, but in the bakery, nonsense is half the culture. You've heard tales of ovens that talk, loaves that sing, and one infamous batch that refused to rise unless you whistled at it. Mid-morning, a scribe stops by with a papyrus scroll. He doesn't even look up as he rattles off his order. 7 barley wheels, 3 lotus rings, 5. He pauses, squints. Fig fish. You sigh. The fig fish are annoying. Shaped like tiny tilapia, they require pinching and poking and the delicate placement of 2 sesame seeds for eyes. You suspect some scribes invent orders just to mess with you. Renef groans. Why not just eat a fish? Because symbolism, you mutter. Still, you mold the first fig fish carefully. It looks more like a startled hedgehog than a serene Nile dweller, but the sesame eyes give it personality. You set it gently on the tray, hoping the scribe has poor vision. At the edge of the room, Menes is being scolded by a visiting inspector from the grain office. Apparently, he misplaced 2 sacks of barley flour last week. Meanies insists it was the wind. The wind, the inspector snorts. You expect me to believe the wind took your flour? Meanies shrugs. It was a very strong wind. Renef intervenes before sarcasm turns into fines. You pretend not to watch, but you're definitely listening. It's comforting in a way. Bakers squabbling with bureaucrats. Some things never change. By midday, the fish loaves are cooling, and you're once again at the dough slab, hands buried in warmth and grain. The scent of baking rolls wafts around you like a prayer. You've forgotten about the cone today. Halfway through shaping a RA-stamped loaf, you realize your head feels unusually cool. Then again, maybe that's not a bad thing. The cone yesterday melted into your collar, and your neck still smells faintly of sandalwood. Temmie notices and smirks. Going bareheaded now? Bold choice. Maybe I like the breeze. Pharaoh will weep. You both grin. The afternoon passes gently, with fewer orders, fewer fires, and more laughter. Someone shares a slice of yesterday's honey pomegranate roll, slightly stale but still divine. Meanies tries to trade his for a whole date loaf. You decline. As the sun dips behind the temple spires, casting long shadows across the bakery's clay floor, you sit for a moment and just listen. You hear the gentle ticking of cooling loaves, the last hiss of the oven's dying heat, the distant sounds of the market closing. The day has ended, but the scent of baked grain lingers in your nose, on your skin, and in your soul. Another day, another dozen loaves. But you wouldn't trade it for all the Pharaoh's figs. Section 6. You arrive just before dawn again. As usual, your sandals slapping the cool earth, a fresh cone already perched on your shaved head like a slowly melting crown. Today's scent is tamarisk. You don't know where Renef finds these perfumes, probably some backroom deal with a temple perfumer who owes him a favor. You don't ask. You just enjoy it. Inside the bakery, things are oddly quiet. No fire yet. No flour in the air. The oven's mouth gapes cold and dark. Temmie's already there, crouched beside the ledgers. She looks up with a frown. Grain's late. You blink. Late. She nods. Supposed to come last night. Nothing. This is bad. Not disaster level bad, but definitely concerning. Grain is the bakery's lifeblood. Without it, there's no flour. Without flour, no dough. Without dough, well, you may as well spend the day counting pigeons. Renef arrives moments later, half-dressed, muttering about bureaucrats and crocodile-headed delivery men. The grain office, he growls, decided to audit inventory. Again, you've heard of these audits. They're less about numbers and more about power. Some official in the granary has a grudge against someone in your temple. Maybe Renef. Maybe someone else. Either way, the grain is being held for verification. You glance around. There are still a few sacks left, maybe enough to last the morning. Barely. Temmie sighs. I guess we ration. And so begins the day of the great flour shuffle. You measure each handful of emmer like it's gold dust. Half-portion loaves. Smaller rolls. Stretching dough with extra water and crushed lentils. It's not ideal, but it'll pass. Tell them it's a light bake, Temmie jokes. Meanies doesn't laugh. He's too busy trying to build a fire with damp wood. You help him, even though smoke gets in your eyes and someone's old cone remnant melts onto your foot. The oven wheezes back to life eventually, grumbling like a tired crocodile. Mid-morning, the first order arrives. 5 flatbreads for a reed mat merchant. Simple enough. You roll them thin, poke holes with a date pit, and toss them into the oven's shallow shelf. Quick bakes. Good crunch. Not much chew. Then comes a bigger order from the temple of Sobuk. That's the crocodile god. You've dealt with them before. They like their bread dense, oily, and shaped like animals. You roll your eyes, but obediently start pinching a loaf into the vague outline of a crocodile. Looks like a lizard with bad posture, Meanies offers. You pinch its snout. Now it's accurate. Renef insists on stamping the Sobuk loaves with the temple's seal, a snarling croc surrounded by waves. You do it carefully, trying not to let the dough deform. These priests are picky. Temmie begins shaping the emergency lentil loaves, heavy, flat, and deeply nutritious. They're not bad, especially with garlic paste, but they bake up gray and vaguely sad. The mood in the bakery dips. Everyone's hungry. The cone on your head is now a drizzle down your collar. Even the pigeons seem unimpressed. Then, out of nowhere, a shout. Grain! You all rush to the entrance. A donkey cart is creaking into the courtyard, led by a young man who looks exhausted and covered in grain dust. He grins. Audit finished. You're clear. The cart is loaded with sacks, fine emmer, barley, and even a rare shipment of spelt. It's like the Nile has just handed you a gift. You cheer. Even Renef cracks a smile. Within minutes, the mood shifts. The oven blazes with renewed purpose. You all move like dancers, measuring, mixing, kneading. The rhythm returns. It's like a second sunrise. You start on the festival cakes, small, round loaves brushed with carob and honey, sprinkled with date shavings. They're a temple favorite. You hum softly as you work. Temmie passes you a fresh cone. Cinnamon and palm oil, she says. You've earned it. You swap it in, feeling a fresh wave of scent and ridiculous pride. You smell like a sacred dessert. By late afternoon, the bakery is running at full strength again. Even the sobuk loaves have turned out well. One looks uncannily like an actual crocodile. Meanies wants to keep it as a pet. Renef says no. Temmie says maybe. You sit by the wall, nibbling a corner of a honey loaf, watching the last rays of sun bounce off flour-flecked trays. The air is warm, the day saved, the bread abundant. Grain may come and go, but bakers endure. Section 7. You wake to the sound of bells. Not temple bells or the city gate, but sheep bells. Which is strange, because you don't live anywhere near sheep. Turns out, a shepherd festival has wandered into Thebes, and they've brought their flocks, their smells, and their appetites. By the time you reach the bakery, there's already a delegation of shepherds outside the courtyard gate, gesturing excitedly and holding up what looks like a woven basket of goat cheese. Renef is staring at them like they've asked for a 7-tier barley cake with buttercream frosting. What do they want? You ask. They want trade, he says flatly. Bread for cheese. You squint. Real cheese. Temmie sniffs the basket. Definitely cheese. Possibly sentient. The shepherds, in their embroidered cloaks and sun-darkened faces, are clearly excited to be here. One of them pulls out a carved token. It bears the mark of the provincial governor, which means this is an official barter request. That complicates things. You can't just say no. So you trade. By mid-morning, your bakery smells like a strange marriage of dough and goat. Not unpleasant, but certainly rustic. You're tasked with making the bread for the shepherds. They want flat rounds, studded with herbs. One of them mimics the motion for crispy, then mimes chewing ecstatically. You get the gist. You use spelt flour, more common among traveling folk, mixed with wild thyme and a pinch of dried onion. The dough is light, stretchy, and surprisingly forgiving. You roll it into discs, then toss them into the hottest part of the oven, letting them blister and puff. The first batch comes out slightly scorched. The second, perfect. The shepherds applaud. One even tries to hug you, but Renef steps between like a human shield. You hand over the bread. They hand you cheese. It's crumbly, sharp, and oddly floral. You're not sure it's aged or just sun-warmed, but you try a bite anyway. It's delicious. Dangerous, but delicious. One of the shepherds, a wiry woman with an eye tattooed on her cheek, offers you a small clay jar. Inside, clarified butter infused with rosemary and garlic. You stare at it like it's treasure. You've only heard stories of such luxuries. You ever bake with that? She asks through Meanies, who speaks passable festival dialect. No, you say honestly. Try it. It makes the bread whisper. Bread that whispers. You're intrigued and mildly terrified. You try a test batch, flatbread brushed with the butter before baking. It comes out glossy, fragrant, and deeply golden. The flavor, like a feast held under stars. You keep a few for yourselves, of course. Perks of the trade. Later that day, the shepherds offer songs. Not in payment, just because. They sit on the steps near the bakery, strumming crude harps and singing about goats, rain, and one particularly heroic sheep that survived a crocodile attack. The lyrics are questionable. The melody, sleepy and oddly haunting. Temmie leans against a flour sack and hums along. This is my kind of chaos, she murmurs. You agree. It's chaos with rhythm. Chaos with bread. As the sun begins to set, The shepherds pack up their cheeses and cloaks, leaving behind only a faint scent of rosemary and hooves. One of them salutes you with a flour-dusted hand. You salute back. Inside, the bakery glows with that mellow, golden light that makes everything look like a painting. You sit beside the oven, your knees sore, your arms dusted in flour, your mind still echoing with goat song. And in your lap, one last piece of whispering bread. Section 8. It starts with a thud against the doorframe, a sound so sudden and deliberate that even Renef drops his reed pen mid-tally. You and Temu exchange glances. No one knocks like that. Not the temple boys, not the grain scribe, and definitely not Meanies, who usually just shouts before entering. The thud comes again. Renef mutters something about omens and stands. You follow. At the door, a scroll, tied with red twine, pinned to the lintel by what appears to be a ceremonial spoon. You ente mostare. It's from the afterlife, she says, deadpan. Renef unties the scroll, reads quickly, and sighs through his nose like a man already chewing on a headache. It's from the treasury. Your stomach sinks. Nothing good ever starts with "it's from the treasury." Turns out, the bakery's livestock allowance has been redistributed. The cow assigned to your flour grinding has been reassigned to a scribe training academy on the other side of town. Effective immediately, which means no more cow. No cow means no churned butter, no sweet milk cakes, no warm early morning cheese curds. More critically, it means no grind assistance. Someone, or more accurately, several someones, will now have to take turns manually crushing grain on the grindstone like it's the Second Dynasty all over again. Renef, reading between the bureaucratic lines, scowls. They've given the cow to that new high scribe, the one with the shiny sandals. Temu snorts. Let's send him a thank you loaf, shaped like a cow's rear. The day drags under the weight of this indignity. Grinding by hand is slow, awkward, and bruising. You kneel at the flat stone, fists gripping the roller, sweat trickling from your chin into the flour. Your back starts aching within minutes. Temu and Meanies take turns, but none of you last long. The oven sits idle, waiting. There's only one solution: ration. Again, you make thin bread, baked on the inside walls of the oven, barely a finger thick. Flat, fast, and surprisingly satisfying when dunked in garlic oil. It's the emergency loaf, the kind baked when the granaries are low or, in today's case, the treasury steals your cow. Despite the setback, orders still come. A merchant requests tomb bread, the kind that's meant to be placed in a burial chamber to feed the dead for eternity. It's more symbolic than edible. Dry, dense, and made to last longer than anyone who might eat it. You shape each one carefully, round, stamped with the god Anubis, and baked until it thuds like clay. Ever eaten one of these? Meanies asks. Once, you say. Chipped a tooth. Temu, ever the prankster, draws a smiley face on one before baking. It's subtle, but it's there. You don't stop her. By midday, a small child appears at the bakery door, barefoot, dusty, and clutching a reed basket. For the priests, she says, holding it out. Inside, dates, garlic, and a very small jar of wine. Renef peers in. A bribe? She shrugs. An offering? Same difference. You give her a piece of whispering bread left over from yesterday's shepherd batch. She grins, then vanishes like a dust sprite. The heat rises. Your hands are raw from grinding, your shoulders twitching with effort. But the oven is full again, the air heavy with the scent of barley and carob. You press a final batch into shape, not bothering with stamps. Just solid loaves, honest, simple, callous. At sundown, as you stretch your back and count your bruises, Meanies holds up a cone he found tucked behind the spice shelf. Scented with fig, he says. Last one. You nod. He places it on your head like a coronation. You sit quietly in the doorway, sweat drying, the cone slowly liquefying into fig-scented trails along your temple. And despite everything, despite the stolen cow, the aching shoulders, the tomb bread, you smile. You made bread today. Section 9. You know it's festival season not by the decorations or music, but by the sudden arrival of 3 temple aides demanding 25 goat-shaped loaves by sunrise. Renef blinks. Goat-shaped. One of them nods enthusiastically, her face slick with excitement, and maybe too much rose oil. For the opening of the new year, the priest of Khnum will bless them before first light. They must resemble goats, specifically happy goats. You rub your temples. This is going to be a long night. The festival of Weepet Renpet, the ancient Egyptian New Year, isn't just about calendars flipping. It's a rebirth, a sacred reset button. People flood temples with offerings, chant prayers, and demand complex carbohydrates in whimsical animal forms. The bakeries? Oh, they barely sleep. You gather the team. Meanies groans. I don't even know what a happy goat looks like. Temu pulls out a piece of old papyrus and sketches something that vaguely resembles a dog with horns. It'll do, Renef says, already hauling flour. You begin shaping. Not just mixing and baking, but sculpting, twisting dough into stubby legs, curling horns, tiny bread tails. You aim for cheerful goat expressions. Mostly, they end up looking either stunned or slightly sinister. The first batch swells in the oven. One goat tips sideways, horns collapsing into feet. Another puffs, so much it loses all facial features. Too much leavening, you mutter, poking the dough blob gently. It's a muffin now. By midnight, you've got a system. Renef does the bodies. Temu handles horn detail, meanies, against everyone's better judgment, adds personality, faces using sesame seeds and clove fragments. One goat ends up winking. Another has an alarmingly lifelike smirk. You decide not to ask questions. Somewhere around third watch, the mood turns slightly delirious. You've all had too much carob syrup, too little water, and exactly no rest. Meanie starts singing a song about goat loaves that definitely does not rhyme. Temu counters with a parody hymn to Khnum, involving cheese and revenge. Even Renef cracks a grin. The oven glows steadily, the goats rise, and by the time the first gray sliver of dawn appears, all 25 are cooling on reed mats, their little bread faces staring back at you in various states of goatish joy. The temple aides return, robes spotless and expressions far too energetic for this hour. They inspect the loaves solemnly, as though choosing sacred statues. One picks up the winking goat, tilts her head. Charming, she declares. They're loaded into a ceremonial basket, and with little more than a nod, they vanish into the temple haze. You collapse against a flour sack. Temu hands you a flask of sour beer, which you accept gratefully. Meanies plops down beside you. I think I'm in love with the goat that looks like my uncle. You don't respond. You just watch the sun climb slowly above the rooftops, casting long golden beams into the bakery. A breeze wafts in. It smells like incense and burnt honey and fresh beginnings. Festival day has officially begun. You'll probably need to make 200 loaves before lunch. But for now, you nap. Goats and all. Section 10. The sun is already climbing when you're shaken awake by Temu's sandal nudging your rib. Festival day, she says, her voice hoarse but chipper. And I hope you didn't forget your turn on festival delivery. You groan. There are a few sacred truths in your bakery. Dough waits for no one. Renef hates singing, and festival delivery is a punishment disguised as honor. You pull yourself up, joints creaking, and reach for your assigned delivery tray. It's stacked with an odd request. 6 loaves shaped like lotus buds, each brushed with honey and topped with precisely 3 candy date slices. Where are these going again? You ask. Temu grins. Crocodile priest. Of course. You've delivered to the temple of Sobek before, and each time it feels like visiting a well-decorated dungeon. Everything is shadowy and damp. The priests are polite but intense, like librarians who moonlight as snake charmers. And they're famously obsessed with punctuality. You load the basket onto a padded plank, hoist it onto your shoulder, and begin the trudge through Thebes' festival thick streets. The city is alive, vendors shouting, dancers swirling in white linen, kids darting between feet with toy boats carved from palm husk. You pass a troupe dressed as the gods, chanting under palm frond arches. One is painted green and carries a symbolic loaf shaped like the earth. Another flaps linen wings and tosses perfumed petals. You nod respectfully, try not to sneeze, and keep walking. The temple of Sobek is at the edge of a sacred lake, its entrance flanked by 2 snarling stone crocodiles. You bow to them out of habit, better safe than swallowed, and step into the cool, dim corridor. Inside, silence, shadows, and sandalwood. A priest greets you, his hair oiled and his expression unreadable. He inspects the tray. Are the dates symmetrical? You blink. As symmetrical as nature allows. He nods. Acceptable. You leave quickly. On the way back, you detour through the outer market. It's bursting with festival foods. Honeyed figs, roasted goose on skewers, and something bubbling in a large clay pot that smells equal parts glorious and dangerous. You spot a stand selling dyed cloth cones. Yes, the melt-on-your-head kind. But these are decorative, probably for nobles. One is bright green and glittering with crushed turquoise. A small girl models it proudly. You wonder if she knows how heavy it'll feel after the third hour. At the edge of the market, a performance is underway. A storyteller stands on an upturned grain jar, acting out the myth of Orale and the star goddess Sopdet. He uses bread loaves as props, one to represent the sun, one for the stars, and a suspiciously burnt one as set. You watch, amused. The loaf sun gets eaten halfway through the tale. It's strangely moving. Back at the bakery, things are wild. A minor priest has fainted in the heat. A merchant is demanding refund for a lopsided barley spiral. Renef is shouting about a missing paddle. Temu has turned a full tray of festival cakes into a shrine offering display, purely for aesthetics. You jump in. The orders blur together. Triangle loaves, spiral buns, ring bread for ceremonial necklaces. You carve hieroglyphs into dough, brush on honey, and stack cooling trays like papyrus scrolls. The air is rich with sugar, ash, and sweat. Mid-afternoon, someone delivers a surprise, a small basket of offerings from the crocodile priest. Inside are 2 lotus-scented cones, a tiny ceramic amulet, and most notably, 3 ivory carving knives shaped like miniature crocodiles. Meanies loses his mind. Crocodile knives. Renef, holding one gingerly, mutters, "I'm not cutting dough with something that has teeth." But Temu's already naming hers. This one's called Snappy. You finish the day with aching feet, a honey-slick tunic, and the lingering sense that half your brain smells like lotus. The city beyond your walls is still in celebration. Fire pots flicker along rooftops. Distant drums echo from temple plazas. Inside the bakery, everything is golden and warm. You close your eyes, just for a moment, and dream of bread shaped like stars. Section 11. The new apprentice arrives just before sunrise, trailing a cloud of nerves and spilled flour. She's no more than 15, eyes wide, hair cropped close like someone expecting to catch fire, and arms too thin for kneading. Renef watches her stumble over the doorframe and mutters, "Another broken twig." Temu, ever the optimist, hands her a broom. "Sweep first. Burn later." Her name is Hiba, and within 30 seconds, she's managed to knock over an empty water jug, step in a bowl of lentils, and sneeze so explosively that one of Meanie's dough spirals collapses. You try to smile reassuringly. Everyone ruins something the first day. Some of us ruin everything. She blushes, sets the broom upright, and tries again. Your first assignment for her is simple: watch the fire. Not stoke it, not feed it, just observe. Feel how the oven breathes, learn the rhythm. Renef calls it learning the dragon's pulse. Mostly, it means don't burn your eyebrows off. Hiba sits beside the oven, eyes wide, lips moving silently as if she's reciting some sort of fire prayer. The oven huffs gently, glowing from within, radiating heat like a tame volcano. Meanwhile, you're shaping goddess-eye loaves for a minor temple across the river. These need to be elongated, decorated with 2 precise thumb presses in the center and a clove pupil. They're meditative to make, repetitive in the best way. Temu leans over your shoulder, inspecting your tray. That one's winking. You squint. It is. Somehow the dough has shifted mid-rise. You shrug and move on. At the oven, Hiba's face is shining with sweat and fear. "She's still alive," Meanies whispers. "That's good." You hand her a paddle. "Want to try feeding the oven?" She hesitates. The oven glares. You show her the rhythm, one motion, smooth and deliberate. Not too deep, or the flames jump. Not too shallow, or the dough won't bake. She does it. Not gracefully, but she does it. The oven accepts the offering. Later, Renef asks her to mix a small bowl of sour starter into the morning dough. She stares at the bubbling bowl like it's cursed, then carefully pours. "It smells like wet sandals," she mumbles. That's how you know it's alive, you reply. The morning passes slowly. Hiba fumbles, flour flies, someone spills a vat of date syrup, meanies, and the entire kitchen floor becomes an ant magnet. But by the third hour, Hiba has managed to form a decent dough ball, shape a halfway believable barley bun, and not set anything on fire. Temmie pats her shoulder. Better than meanies on day one. I accidentally salted Renef's tea, Meanies admits. Twice, Renef grumbles. By midday, Hiba's carrying trays. Carefully, her arms wobble like reeds in a breeze, but nothing falls. You remember that feeling. Terror mixed with determination, like baking bread on a tightrope. In the late afternoon, a temple boy delivers a small scroll sealed with a cat's paw print. Offering for Batet, he says. Needs to be cat-shaped. Of course it does. Temmie sketches something quick. Meanie suggests a bread cat with raisins for eyes. You go one better. Make it a lounging pose, like a proper spoiled feline. Ears up, tail curled. You hand one to Hiba and say, try shaping one. She nods, bites her lip, and sets to work. The result is odd. It looks more like a startled mongoose than a cat. But it has charm. You let it pass. The loaves go into the oven. Hiba watches them rise with the reverence of a priestess watching the stars align. When the last cat loaf cools, Renef sniffs it and says, smells like improvement. Hiba beams. You sit together on the steps as the sun dips below the rooftops. The day's baking is done. Hiba's tunic is stuck to her with flour and sweat, and her cone is crooked. But she made bread today. Real bread. Kind of cat-shaped bread. Burnt in places. But hers. And that, in this place, is sacred. Section 12. It begins innocently enough, with a basket of pale blue lotus flowers and an assignment scrawled in a shaky temple hand. 12 ceremonial loaves. Infused with essence. For night rites. Renef groans. Not this again. You know what's coming. Blue lotus, Nelumbo nacifera, has a long and sticky history in Thebes. Technically, it's a flower. Practically, it's a mild intoxicant. Perfume, sacred symbol, romantic enhancer, and alleged dream portal, depending on who you ask. You've baked with it before. Once. At a scribe's wedding. No one remembers what happened after the third round of rolls. Temmie glances over the note. Do they want the essence or the effect? Renef shrugs. Probably both. You prepare carefully. The petals are dried and papery, with a scent somewhere between anise and wet summer. You steep them gently in warm water, coaxing out the oil. Milky, faintly sweet, and unnervingly sticky. You knead the lotus infusion into a honey flour base, fold in chopped dates, then dust the top with carob powder. It's less of a loaf, more of a temple confection. Sweet, fragrant, and subtly floral. Temmie says, tastes like a garden's last breath. You nod. A garden that might flirt with you. Meanies tries a pinch and giggles for 3 straight minutes. That's when you realize the effect is kicking in. Not strong, just fuzzy, like your thoughts are wearing linen. You hum to yourself without realizing it, rhythm slowing. Even Renef walks more languidly, muttering about the oven being a sunset you can feed. You switch gears to shape the loaves. The temple note didn't specify a form, so you go for elegance. Long oval loaves, scored with crescent lines, each adorned with a single lotus petal before baking. Temmie suggests one be shaped like a reclining goddess. You attempt it. The result looks more like a sleeping fish. Still, into the oven they go. The scent, when they begin to bake, is potent, like a flower stall during a thunderstorm. It clings to the inside of your nose and makes your shoulders relax involuntarily. Renef stands in front of the oven with his eyes closed. I'm remembering my cousin's second wedding. Temuchaka's. The one with the goat that could dance. The very one. You sit beside the oven, breathing in warm lotus and roasted honey. Your hands feel distant. Someone, possibly you, begins humming an old funerary chant, slowly and off-key. The dough rises like it's floating. A pigeon lands on the ledge outside and stares at you meaningfully. You stare back. Everything feels symbolic. When the loaves come out, they shimmer slightly in the light, golden brown with glossy tops, the lotus scent strong enough to be seen. You line them on a reed mat, fingers trembling slightly, unsure if it's the heat or the flowers or just the act of baking something so strange and sacred. A boy arrives from the temple, robed in black and gold. "These are for the dream vigil," he says. "You've heard of it. Priests gather under moonlight to speak to gods, or each other, or sometimes just to themselves. The lotus loaves help. You wrap each one carefully in wax papyrus. The boy carries them off without thanks. You don't mind. The scent lingers long after he's gone. That night, you can't sleep. Your hands still smell like lotus. You dream of baking bread on clouds, of singing pigeons, of kneading dough that whispers your name. And in the middle of it all is a loaf shaped like a reclining goddess, finally smiling." Section 13. The festival season may be over, but you're not done baking weird things for weird people. Just before dawn, a temple runner bursts into the bakery courtyard, panting and holding a water-warp scroll. "Urgent," he gasps. "Offering. For Sobek's lake priests." Renef sighs before even unrolling it. "Let me guess. Fish-shaped." "Worse," you mutter, reading over his shoulder. "The order is for a midnight temple feast. Location on the water. Audience: the high priest, 2 novices, and a particularly pampered crocodile named Nesh. The requested bread must be suitable for consumption in darkness, capable of floating if dropped, and spiritually flattering to aquatic deities. In short, a late-night catering gig. 4 reptiles. Do we get to meet the crocodile?" Meanies asks, eyes shining. "I hope not," says Temu. "Last time one looked at me, I forgot how to speak." Preparation starts immediately. You decide to go simple but elegant, flat, oblong loaves shaped like fish, brushed with garlic oil and dotted with sesame scales. You use barley and spelt for the base, dense enough to hold shape, light enough to maybe float. You test one in the washing basin. It bobs like a lazy duck. "Perfect," Renef grunts. Temu adds a flare, open mouths and poppy seed eyes. Meanies insists one must be smiling. You let him have it. The moon is full when you load the basket. You wrap the loaves in oiled linen, stack them beside a jar of date vinegar, and head out, torches in hand. The temple of Sobek sits beside the sacred lake, its reflection rippling in the dark water. The priest greets you silently, his linen robes shimmering silver in the moonlight. 2 novices bow deeply. One holds a tray of lotus wine. The other clutches what looks like a leash. You do not ask questions. You're led onto a floating platform lined with papyrus mats. The feast has begun. You watch as the priest tears a bite from one of your loaves and dips it in a clay bowl of something oily and spicy. He chews slowly, nodding. A deep splash breaks the silence. Something large and scaly has arrived. You stiffen. It's Nesh, the crocodile. Huge, glistening, and disturbingly majestic. His handler tosses him a chunk of fish-shaped bread. He gulps it without chewing, then flops contentedly back into the shallows. "You've been approved," whispers one novice. "By the crocodile?" He nods solemnly. You stand there, on a raft lit by moonlight, watching your bakery's output become part of an ancient, wet, sacred, toothy ritual. It's oddly beautiful. Later, the priest sends you off with a token of appreciation, a small amulet carved from fishbone, strung on a reed cord. It smells faintly of garlic. Back at the bakery, Temu's asleep beside a sack of flour. Meanies is humming a crocodile lullaby. Renef doesn't even look up when you walk in. "How'd it go?" "He liked it," you say. "Didn't bite anyone." Renef grunts. "High praise." You hang the fishbone amulet on a nail by your paddle. It swings gently, catching the breeze, glinting in the last light before dawn. You've baked for nobles, priests, and ghosts. But baking for a crocodile? That's something else. Section 14. You're barely halfway through your morning stretch when Temu leans in and whispers, "You ever smelled your own cone up close?" You blink. "Excuse me." She gestures vaguely toward her head, where today's cone, scented with juniper and something faintly minty, is already trickling down the side of her neck. "Mine smells like a herb garden drowned in goat butter. I think it's turned." You sniff cautiously. It's not awful, but it's sharp, like perfume left in the sun too long. Meanie saunters by with an exaggerated sniff. Pungent. You roll your eyes and return to kneading, but Temu's complaint sticks in your mind. What is in these cones? Where do they come from? Why do some smell like heaven and others like expired temple offerings? The mystery deepens when Renef drops a sealed jar on the prep table mid-morning. New shipment, he grunts. Temple-grade cones. The jar is thick ceramic, stamped with the mark of Hathor. That means it's serious. You crack it open carefully and immediately recoil. Oh, Temu says, wrinkling her nose. That's desertive. The scent hits like a sandalwood brick wrapped in bitter myrrh and sprinkled with crushed herbs. It's sharp, resinous, and slightly peppery. Somewhere in the back, a floral note tries to escape but gets strangled by the rest. Renef shrugs. Supposed to ward off fatigue. And mosquitoes. Meanies leans in. Also joy. You each take a cone, skeptically. Yours is perfectly shaped, rounded at the top, slightly conical, the texture smooth and waxy. It feels heavier than usual, like someone packed extra medicine into it. Temu mutters, if I pass out and dream of arguing with onions, avenge me. You place the cone on your head. It's cool at first, soothing even. But within moments, the scent begins to warm and spread. It clings to the back of your throat. It itches your sinuses. Your eyes water a little. Does anyone else feel slightly cursed? Meanies asks, blinking rapidly. You power through. The day's baking order is blissfully normal, date-filled spirals and 3 trays of barley crescents. But your concentration wavers. The cone's aroma is strong, too strong. It starts to feel like you're baking in a garden of overripe incense. Temu abandons hers an hour in, declaring it a chemical war crime. You try to stick it out. Big mistake. By the 3rd tray, you're sweating more than usual. Your head feels heavy. You hear music in your left ear, except there is no music. The oven flickers, and for a second, you swear the fire burps your name. You rip the cone off and fling it into the ashes. Renef watches. That bad? You nod, wiping your forehead. I think it tried to possess me. Later, you catch Meanies trying to pickle his cone in vinegar to mellow it out. It doesn't work. You all agree. Some cones are for show. Others are for scent. And a few are a test of the gods' patience. Temu, digging through the spice shelf, finds an old favorite, sandalwood and figure. She places it on your head with ceremonial flourish. For surviving the battle of the cone. The scent is mellow, warm, and familiar. You breathe deep. Much better. You finish your shift smelling like a sweet, smoky orchard instead of an alchemy experiment gone rogue. The bread is perfect, the crescent loaves crisp and golden. That night, as you walk home under a soft breeze, you catch a faint trace of sandalwood still clinging to your hair. And you smile, because now you know what the bad cones smell like. And you survived. Section 15. You're barely through your first cup of barley water when Meanies whispers, "Don't panic, but the oven might be haunted." You blink at him, mid-chew on a date roll. What? He gestures toward the hearth. It's side. Oven side, Meanies. No, this one side in Aramaic. You stare at him, then over at the oven. It looks normal, glowing low with early fire, warm and inviting. Certainly not possessed. Still, the idea lingers. It's not entirely outlandish. In Egypt, ovens are more than clay and fire. Some are built with prayers baked into their walls, little charms buried beneath their base, sacred ash stirred in with mortar. The hearth is symbolic. Heat, home, transformation. So, yes, there are stories. Renef scoffs when he hears. If it's haunted, it's by bad bread. Temu es intrigued. She lights a bit of frankincense and waves it over the fire just in case. For spiritual ventilation, she explains. The day's baking begins. Today's order includes festival spirals, seed cakes, and something called a bread pyramid, which is exactly what it sounds like. 4 loaves stacked into a step pyramid and brushed with carob syrup. Tedious, but structurally satisfying. As you knead, you start noticing oddities. A loaf puffs unevenly, despite perfect shaping. A tray of barley rolls singes just slightly on one side, despite a centered placement. And once, just once, you hear a creak from inside the oven wall. You pause. Temu raises an eyebrow. Sighing again. Something creaked. Maybe it's settling. Maybe it's possessed. Meanies offers to sleep beside it tonight. To observe. You snore louder than the fire, Renef mutters. Still, by midday, the weirdness intensifies. A test loaf swells into the shape of a cow. The cinnamon cones all melt faster than expected. One apprentice claims to hear a whisper about salt when bending to retrieve a dropped paddle. Temu starts referring to the oven as the oracle. Meanies, now fully invested, offers it a spoonful of beer. You play along. You shape one loaf into the symbol of ma'at, balance, truth, and place it reverently at the oven's mouth. The oven crackles. Nothing explodes. Still, the rest of the loaves come out perfect. Not just acceptable, perfect. Golden crusts, even crumb, no cracks. Renef frowns at them suspiciously. This is too good. Temu whispers. Maybe the oracle approves. By closing time, the oven hums quietly, embers glowing like amber eyes. You sit beside it, warmth on your face, barley roll in hand. You're not haunted, you say softly. Just opinionated. The oven says nothing. But the last loaf, shaped like a seated cat, comes out smiling. Section 16. The bread strike begins, not with shouting or banners, but with one very deliberate act. Renef folds his arms and refuses to knead. It's festival week again, and the temple of Ammonius has requested triple batches of date swirls, barley braids, crescent rolls, and 100 goddess-eye loaves. All before sunset. No extra rations, no helpers, no blessings. Just a wax-sealed scroll and a card to your duty. Renef, not known for diplomacy, squints at the scroll and says, "No." Temu chokes on her barley water. Meanie stops mid-egg wash. You blink. "No," you repeat. Renef nods. "We're not dough golems. If they want triple output, they can bring triple hands. Or triple cows." Temu starts clapping. And thus, the bakery strike begins. Silently, respectfully, but firmly. You all sit. Meanies makes a polite protest cone, just a normal wax cone with a word, no scratched in it. He wears it proudly. A few minutes later, a temple aide arrives, expecting baskets. Instead, she finds 5 flour-covered bakers sitting quietly beside an unlit oven, sipping sour beer. "Where are the loaves?" she asks, squinting. Renef shrugs. "With the extra hands we weren't given." She gapes. "You can't just stop baking." "We can," Temu says. "And we are." You expect thunderbolts. Instead, the aide sputters, spins, and vanishes. Hours pass. No bread rises. No flour flies. Meanie starts a quiet game of bread stamp checkers. Temu draws a fish in the ash. The oven, unlit, feels like a silent witness. Then a delegation arrives. 2 scribes, 1 overseer, and, most importantly, a quartermaster dragging a small cart. Inside the cart, 2 new apprentices, 1 sack of extra flour, a jug of sweet beer, and an apology. You all look to Renef. He nods once, and the oven is lit. The apprentices are scrawny but eager. You toss one a cone. He flinches, then catches it. Temu assigns them to mixing while you restart the leaven. Meanies begins shaping with the glee of someone who's won a battle without swinging a paddle. The dough sings. Loaves bloom. By sunset, the bakery is steaming, glowing alive. The temple aide returns, sheepish, to collect the order. She accepts the trays without a word. On top of one is Meanie's protest cone, now slightly melted but still bearing its message. The next morning, Renef finds a fresh cone at the bakery doorstep, rose and saffron, clearly temple-made, clearly a peace offering. He doesn't smile, but he wears it. Section 17. It begins with a crash and a yowl. You're rolling out a fresh sheet of date dough when something streaks across the bakery like a windstorm wearing whiskers. It knocks over 2 water jugs, appends a bowl of barley, and disappears behind the spice shelf. Temu yells, "The cat's back!" Meanie scrambles to the corner. "I thought we locked the window." You peek under the prep table. 2 glowing eyes stare back at you, unblinking. The feline intruder, sleek, dusty, and unapologetic, emerges with the nonchalance of a priest inspecting his domain. She's not just any cat. She's the cat, the one who stole a honey cake during the last moon festival, gave birth in the flour sack last summer, and once ate half a fish-shaped loaf intended for a funeral procession. Renef glares. Shoo! She sits. Temu sighs. She's choosing us again. Meanies offers a crust of bread. She sniffs, sneezes, and bats it off the table. High standards, you murmur. The cat, black, lean, and scarred from city life, struts around the room, sniffing baskets and inspecting cooling trays. She leaps lightly onto the oven ledge, curls her tail, and settles like a queen returning to her throne. Renef mutters, "If she sheds in the dough again, I'm feeding her to the crocodile." But no one moves her. Truth is, cats are sacred, Bastet's messengers, killers of vermin, supposed wardens of domestic peace. And this one, despite her thievery, has a certain charisma. You all start baking around her, carefully. Today's loaves are simple: ring bread, carob buns, and spelt twists. The scent of cinnamon drifts under the beams. You glance up now and then. She's still there, eyes half closed, tail flicking. Then she moves, straight toward the cooling rack. You intercept just in time, but not before she sinks one claw into a barely set barley roll. You pull the tray away. She blinks at you, entirely unfazed. "Was that approval?" Meanies asks. "She tagged it." You reply, "That loaf's officially hers." So you keep it aside. Later, a minor noble arrives, demanding a custom loaf shaped like a pomegranate. While Temu sketches, the cat weaves between your legs, purring faintly. You feel a brush of fur against your calf, and realize she's left a trail of paw prints in the flour dust. Renef sees, groans. It's happening again. You try to clean it, but it's everywhere now, tiny feline tracks looping through the workspace like hieroglyphs of chaos. By midday, the cat's claimed a spot in the sun beside the proofing baskets. She's knocked a cone off Meanie's head, stolen 2 raisins, and swiped a tiny piece of raw dough. You're not even mad anymore. "She's one of us now," Temu says. You name her Sesame, mostly because she bats sesame seeds across the floor like sacred beads. Renef insists she's a curse, but when the noble tastes his pomegranate loaf and declares it mystically perfect, you notice the paw-shaped dent in the crust and smile, because sometimes good bread just needs a little help from a cat. Section 18. The morning begins like any other: heat, flour, and a cone already dribbling tamarind oil down your neck. You're halfway through shaping barley spirals when Meanies wails from the back pantry. "Someone cursed the bread again." You freeze. Temu looks up. "What kind of curse?" "The cracking kind." You rush over. Sure enough, half the loaves on the back tray are split, big dramatic fractures across their tops, like miniature earthquakes. Renef groans. That's the 3rd time this month. Cracked loaves are no joke. Some are cosmetic, others ominous. In temple offerings, a cracked top can mean misfortune, poor preparation, or, if you're dealing with very picky priests, divine disapproval. Temu pokes a fissure. Definitely too dry, but maybe also bad energy. Meanies insists it's a curse. "Last time I saw this, a priest said the grain was angry." You sigh. To be safe, you decide to cover all bases, technical and spiritual. You remake the dough with extra water and a touch more leaven. Then you chant a baking charm you once heard from a traveling Nubian merchant, something about soft bellies and satisfied gods. It's vaguely musical and oddly comforting. Temu adds a protection amulet, just a scrap of linen with the eye of Horus drawn in charcoal, tied to the oven door. The second batch goes in. You wait. It's tense. Meanies fans the oven with a palm frond, just in case. The loaves bake slowly, carefully. One puffs, then the others follow. You peer through the fire slit. No cracks. When they come out, golden and steaming, the tops are smooth. You all sigh in relief. You mark the good ones with a spiral stamp, your personal sigil of yes, these loaves are fine, please don't smite us. Still, you're curious. You ask around the market. Turns out, someone has been spreading whispers that the Temple of Thoth is secretly replacing its bakery. That new loaves must be flawless. That cracks are signs of moral decay. Classic bread politics. Back at the bakery, Meanie suggests baking a decoy loaf, something designed to crack dramatically, then sending it as a lesson. Renef rolls his eyes. We're bakers, not street sorcerers. But Temu's intrigued. That evening, you bake one loaf with extra dry flour, score it just so, and let it bake into the perfect fissure. You stamp it with a new mark, a wide eye and a frown. It goes into the next temple delivery batch, snuck between the perfect ones. The next morning, a junior priest returns with a note. The cracked loaf spoke. We accept the lesson. Blessings upon your oven. You stare at the message, dumbfounded. Meanie's beams. Told you it was cursed. You bake lighter that day. Every loaf shines, and not a single one splits. Section 19. It's market day, and that means chaos. Controlled, perfumed chaos. Vendors line the alleyways with baskets of dried figs, coils of linen, slabs of salted fish, and more varieties of onions than any civilization should reasonably name. The streets hum with chatter, haggling, and the occasional donkey bray. But you're carrying a tray of ring loaves, fresh, golden, and tied together with braided twine for easy handling. These are the bakery's market batch, simple breads meant for ordinary people. No divine stamps, no ceremonial flourishes, just edible, dependable dough. You reach your assigned stall, tucked beside an old cellar of roasted chickpeas. She nods in greeting, already dusting off your table space. Meanies has followed you, carrying the backup tray, looking around like a village boy seeing a crocodile for the first time. Look at all these smells, he whispers. You begin arranging the loaves, but your eyes drift to the other stalls. Everyone's got something new today, painted beads from Nubia, sour tamarind sauces, even a small jar of imported sesame. You blink. Imported? From where? No one knows, but it smells rich and roasty. Temu joins you an hour later, holding a tiny reed scroll. They're accepting papyrus coupons now, she says. You stare at her. For bread. For everything. Look! She waves the scroll like it's a royal decree. Turns out, a merchant guild has introduced a new system, hand-stamped papyrus tokens, meant to represent stored value. 1 coupon equals 1 loaf. 5 coupons equals a braided barley ring and a fig bun. Meanies is horrified. We're being replaced by scrolls. You sigh. No, we're being paid by scrolls. It takes a bit to adjust. Customers start handing you slips instead of copper. Some are neatly stamped. Others are smudged, damp, or suspiciously fish-scented. You accept them all, tallying them on a wax board for Renef to decode later. By midday, the scent of cumin bread wafts over from a competing stall. You glare. Temu raises an eyebrow. Bread rivalry? You nod. They used our spiral stamp. You send Meanies over to investigate. He returns chewing something. Definitely not our flour, he says. Too gritty. Revenge is subtle. You shape a few extra loaves, tight spirals, heavy with fig and sprinkle with actual sesame. You price them low. People flock. Within the hour, your tray is empty. The cumin rival glares. You wink. Later, a noble steward stops by. The lady seeks festival bread, he says. Something nostalgic. You hand him a barley crescent filled with date mash and stamped with a lotus. He smiles faintly and hands over a gold-painted coupon, the highest value token you've ever seen. It smells like cinnamon. You frame it in your ledger. Back at the bakery, Renef studies the coupons. Barter we understood. Silver we respected. But this. He squints. Meanies holds up a fake one he drew himself. Can I buy a goat with this? Renef grabs it and lights it on fire. By sunset, the stalls wind down. You pack up the last 2 loaves, one slightly dented, the other pinched into a heart by a love-struck customer. The chickpea seller hands you a cone. Payment for the bread I borrowed. You sniff it. Ginger and lavender. Odd, but pleasant. You walk home slowly, your basket empty, your hands floury, your head perfumed by unexpected trade. And tucked in your belt pouch, 15 papyrus coupons and a very smug smile. Section 20. It's late afternoon, and the oven has finally stopped growling. The loaves are cooling, the floors are swept, and you're elbow deep in dough when Temu says it. You ever flirted while floury? You blink. Pardon. She grins. You know. Mid-kneed. Arms covered in barley paste. A wink. A smile. A suggestive raisin. Meanies, listening nearby, nearly drops a paddle. What's a suggestive raisin? Temu smirks. You'll know it when you see it. Turns out the bakery, like every workplace in Thebes, has its fair share of quiet courtships, shy smiles, and mysterious deliveries of extra sweet carob buns. You think back. The young scribe who kept returning for just one more crescent loaf. The temple assistant who insisted on carrying heavy sacks for you and always smelled faintly of pomegranate. The girl who left a palm flower on your bench and vanished before you could thank her. Bakery flirting isn't loud. It's subtle. It's in the way someone shapes a loaf a little prettier than usual, or how two apprentices' hands brush when reaching for the same bowl of flour. Temu claims she once spelled someone's name in sesame seeds on a honey cake. They noticed. They married me for 6 months. Minnie's pipes up. I've been leaving little heart shapes in the dough I give to the grain inspector. Isn't she 80? She has beautiful elbows. You can't argue with that. Midway through the conversation, a delivery boy arrives, awkward, sunburned, and clutching a tightly wrapped parcel. It's for you, he tells Temu, cheeks reddening. She unwraps it carefully. Inside, a small date roll shaped like a crocus. The delicate purple petals are carved with precision. A note is tucked beneath. Your laugh sounds like honey cracking over fire. You all groan in unison. Temu blushes furiously and pockets the note. Don't say a word, she warns. You respect her wishes. Mostly. Later, as you knead a batch of sweet buns, you wonder what kind of message you'd want to leave in bread. A name spelled in seeds, a swirl shaped like the Nile, or just a perfectly shaped roll, crust glistening, crumb tender, handed over with a quiet smile. You're no poet, but you can make dough speak. The next morning, you shape one extra loaf. Small, simple, with a faint swirl on top like a river bend. You wrap it in a fig leaf and leave it beside the water jars. No note, no stamp, just bread, and maybe a little hope. Section 21. The temple meal is late today. You're halfway through your lunch, 2 fig rolls and a lump of soft cheese, when Meanies bursts in, clutching his stomach. Don't eat the barley buns. You blink mid-chew. Too late, Temu mutters, swallowing a bite. Meanies groans. I think I underbaked a tray. The bakery freezes. Undercooked bread isn't just a kitchen slip, it's a culinary betrayal. Dense centers, gummy middles, maybe even raw dough. Worse still, stomach grumbles. Temple stomachs. Renef frowns. Where are the buns now? Temple of Hathor. Everyone groans. Hathor's priests are famously indulgent, but also notoriously dramatic. One sour bun, and they'll file a scroll of complaint, written in poetic couplets and sealed with actual tears. You grab the last bun from the batch, crack it open. The center's doughy, raw even. You all stare in silence. All right, Renef says, rubbing his face. Crisis mode. You whip up a fresh batch, this time with extra rise and longer bake time. Meanies is banned from the oven. Temu watches each tray like a hawk. You taste one mid-cooling, warm, airy, perfect. Then you send Temu and Meanies to the temple with the apology tray. To soften the moment, you shape the buns like little cows, Hathor's sacred animal. You add carabais. You spritz the tray with date water. You include a reed card. The first cows wandered. These ones are loyal. You wait. Time passes, slowly when your reputation's in the fire. Temu returns alone, raising one hand with fingers crossed. They laughed. You exhale. They ate all of them. Even the note. Meanies adds, one priest said he forgives us if we bring more tomorrow. Disaster averted. But the moment lingers. Later, you sit outside the bakery, rubbing your stomach. Maybe it's nerves. Maybe it's underbaked dough. You reflect. Bread is power. Bread is risk. And sometimes, bread is slightly underdone. But a cow-shaped loaf with carabais, that's diplomacy. Section 22. Night has settled over Thebes, but your shift isn't quite over. Renef, holding a flickering lamp and a checklist that looks older than Pharaoh, gestures toward a newly arrived scroll. Special order, he mutters. Funerary loaves. You all go quiet. These aren't your usual soft spirals or golden honey buns. Funerary loaves are different. Meant not for the living, but for the eternity bound. They must be dense, preservable, symbolic. These will be sealed in a tomb. Maybe touched once. Maybe never. You scan the order. 30 loaves for a respected papyrus maker named Neferhotep. Not high royalty, but important enough for ceremony. Renef reads the scroll aloud. May the bread nourish him in the field of reeds. May his soul never hunger. You nod. The work begins. The dough is heavy, more barley than anything else. No leaven, no sweetness, Just grain, water, and a pinch of salt for remembrance. You knead slowly, deliberately. Each loaf shaped into a different symbol: ankhs, scarabs, folded linen, the sun disk. Temu handles the Eye of Horus loaves. Her thumbs press the shape with quiet care. Menes makes a loaf shaped like an open hand. "So he can hold it," he says. Renef's hands shake slightly as he shapes the offering loaf, a simple circle with a thumb dent in the center. It's the kind placed nearest the body, the first taste in the afterlife. You don't speak much. There's a reverence to this work. You're not just feeding a body, you're feeding a memory, a hope, a soul. The loaves bake slower than usual, each one placed in the oven with a whisper. When they emerge, they smell not sweet, but ancient, like grain, stone, and time. You wrap them in linen, tie them with simple reed cord, and stack them in a ceremonial tray. Renef seals it with wax and presses the bakery's mark into the surface. The temple courier bows low when collecting it. They'll place them before sunrise. You don't go back to baking after. Instead, you sit outside the bakery with Temu and Menes, watching the stars. The air smells of warm barley and distant incense. "Do you think they eat it?" Menes asks. "In the field of reeds?" Temu shrugs. "If they're lucky." You think of Neferhotep, sitting under golden skies, biting into a dense barley round, smiling. You hope it holds together. You hope it tastes like home. Section 23. The morning begins with scribbles. Renef is hunched over the ledger, muttering at a wax tablet smeared with tally marks and flower fingerprints. "This doesn't add up," he says, jabbing at the column labeled grain rations. Temu peeks over. "You forgot the surprise batch for the goat wedding." Menes perks up. "Oh yeah, we made tiny buns shaped like hooves." Renef groans. "Those weren't sanctioned." You shrug. "But they were adorable." It's audit day, the one day of the cycle when the temple's grain inspectors come to verify your usage. Which really means inspect your flour sacks, squint at your records, and silently judge your weighing technique. And worse, they bring the scribe. You all dread the scribe. He's neat, quiet, and terrifyingly efficient. He never sweats. His cone never melts. His sandals are always white. "He's already in the courtyard," Menes whispers. Panic sets in. You scramble to clean. Temu wipes down the ledgers. Menes tries to brush flour off the floor, succeeds in launching a mini dust cloud. You hide the half-eaten experimental carrot loaf under a reed mat. The scribe enters like a blade. His eyes scan everything. Oven soot, weighing bowls, even your fingers. He doesn't speak, just starts checking. First, the flour sacks. He opens each one, pinches a sample, sniffs, frowns slightly. Temu offers a cone-scented smile. He ignores it. Then, the bread racks. He examines today's batch. Spiral rolls, fig crescents, triangle loaves. He lifts a date bun, weighs it in his hand like a judge deciding fate. You whisper, "That one's 5 bites." For if you're greedy, the scribe writes something on his tablet. Menes quietly sweats into a honey cake. Then, the moment you all fear, he approaches the ledgers. Renef hands over the wax tablet with the grace of a man submitting his will. The scribe reads, and reads, and flips, and reads again. Silence. He finally looks up. There is an unaccounted entry. Day 12, moon 3. 14 barley crescents. No record of allocation. Everyone freezes. Then Temu clears her throat. Temple of Batet. Emergency offering. A cat was ill. The scribe blinks. A cat. A very important cat. A pause. Then he nods. Temu exhales. He finishes his audit. Just before leaving, he reaches into his robe and produces a small cone, rose and sandalwood, and places it silently on the weighing table. Then he's gone. Menes exhales dramatically. That was horrible. Renef stares at the cone. Is that a tip? You shrug. Maybe it's his version of a thank you. You take a bite of the hidden carrot loaf. It's not bad. A little too sweet. Audit day ends. The bakery, still standing, returns to rhythm. Flour flies. Dough hums. And on the corner of the weighing table, the cone sits, perfectly upright, not melting. Section 24. The day begins with a thrum in the air. Not thunder, Not a festival drum, just a quiet energy, like the bakery itself knows something's coming. Temmie notices it too. Feels like a storm, but inside the walls, Renef shrugs. Probably just another noble order. It's not. A runner arrives at mid-morning with a scroll stamped in blue wax, the mark of the royal kitchens. It's rare, reserved for moments of political maneuvering, divine birthdays, or visits. Temmie reads the note, her eyebrows arching. The pharaoh's steward is passing through Thebes, she says, and he wants our bread. Everyone goes silent. The pharaoh himself isn't coming, but his steward, the one with sway over temple budgets, food quotas, and baker assignments, will stop by for an afternoon meal. Meanies immediately drops a bowl. Renef mutters, "No mistakes. You're given the central job, crafting the table centerpiece. Not a loaf, not a tray, a bread sculpture. What should it be, you ask?" Temmie thinks. Something, impressive but sacred. You settle on a sacred falcon, symbol of Horus. Powerful, respected, symmetrical. It's ambitious, maybe too ambitious. The dough must be firm yet pliable. You mix it slowly, carefully. Barley, spelt, honey, just enough leaven to puff, but not distort. You shape the wings, the tail feathers, the beak. You use sesame for the eyes. Meanies carves out a tiny sun disk to rest between its wings. The oven roars. The falcon enters like royalty. Outside, the steward's caravan is arriving. Lacquered chests, painted donkeys, guards in lapis-studded collars. A lot of spectacle for someone who just wants bread. Temmie whispers, "He'll eat with the temple council. That's 3 priests, a cartographer, and that woman who drinks vinegar from a cup like it's wine." High stakes, you mutter. The falcon loaf emerges. Perfect. Golden. Crisp. Radiating warm symbolism. You place it on a tray, surrounded by barley crescents and braided honey buns. It gleams. The steward arrives tall, scented, with rings on 6 fingers and sandals cleaner than yours ever were on delivery. He nods politely, inspects the offering. His fingers hover over the falcon. Then pause. Then, unexpectedly, he reaches instead for one of Meanie's simple triangle loaves. "Crunch," he says. Bites. Chews. Smiles. The priests chatter. The cartographer eats in silence. The vinegar woman toasts with a fig bun. The steward tries the falcon. Breaks off a wing. Nods again. Then he says, "Assign them a grain bonus." Renef's jaw drops. Meanies nearly faints. The steward finishes his meal, leaves without flourish. The bakery erupts in joy. Grain bonus means cushion. Fewer audits. More flour. More freedom. Temuhagzu. Meanies declares triangle loaves, ambassadors of diplomacy. You sit in the doorway at sunset, watching the lights soften across the flour-dusted tiles. The falcon's body has been eaten, but its eye remains, watching. Section 25. The oven is quiet tonight. No flames. No loaves. No clatter of bowls or shouting apprentices. Just the hush of a finished day, the scent of old flour in the air, and the faint creak of baskets settling in the heat. You sit beside the cooling trays, cross-legged, a cone on your head that smells faintly of fig and cedar. The bakery breathes around you, warm walls, soot-kissed bricks, the memory of thousands of loaves rising and falling. Temmie dozes nearby, arms crossed, a spiral bun half-eaten on her lap. Meanies leans against the spice shelf, humming a lullaby about grain spirits and lazy crocodiles. Even Renef has gone still, perched beside the oven like a tired hawk. It's inventory night, not just of flour and grain, but of everything. You count the petal burns on your arms, the sweet buns that never rose, the crescent loaves that cracked just right. You remember the apprentice who cried into her first dough, the noble who wept over a seed cake, the goat who ate the proofing rolls, the crocodile who nodded in approval. The bakery has seen it all. You rise quietly and walk to the back wall. There, painted faintly on mud brick, are the old baker marks, thumbprints, scratch sigils, names carved with a nail. Yours is there too. Just a swirl. Simple. But yours. Outside, the stars are thick. The moon is a soft coin, hanging low. Somewhere in the city, a temple bell chimes once. You return inside, brush flour from your lap, and light a single oil lamp. Its glow stretches long shadows across the walls, making the baskets look like giant sleeping beetles. You take the last barley roll from the tray. Imperfect, slightly lopsided. It smells like comfort. You bite. The crust crackles. The inside is warm, a little tangy, very real. As you chew, the room seems to breathe with you. Slow, gentle, full of memory. You close your eyes and listen to the hush of cooled stones, to the soft sigh of settling flour, to the ghost of loaves long eaten, long remembered. This bakery has been your temple, your world, and tonight it sleeps. And now you rest too. Let the warmth of the oven fade into your bones, that soft heat curling around your spine like a linen wrap. The scent of baked grain still lingers, barely there now, something sweet, something familiar. Let it pull you deeper. There's nothing left to do tonight. No scrolls to tally, no loaves to watch. The cones are melted. The fire is out. The stars stretch far and soft above the roof beams. You've worked hard. You've kneaded, shaped, baked, laughed. You've fed a city, priests, nobles, travelers, even a cat with the soul of a queen. You've touched lives with bread, one quiet loaf at a time. So breathe. Let the flour dust settle across your mind like a gentle fog. Let your hands grow still. Let your thoughts rise and fall like loaves in a slow oven, each one warm, rounded in content. You're not just a baker. You're a keeper of comfort, a steward of scent and memory, a humble artisan whose touch lingers longer than time knows how to count. And tomorrow, well, the oven will wake again. The flour will fly. The bread will rise. But for now, let go. Let your breath slow. Let your body sink. Let sleep come like a warm crust forming over the world. And drift gently into the hush, into the stillness, into the quiet, golden dark.